everybody, this is Tyler once again from the Character Workshop, slowly but surely recovering from a cold. Well, I honestly regret not talking about this when it first came out, but things have happened, and I don't need to get into any of the details about it, but a couple months ago, in honor of the 80th anniversary of the Railway series, the series of books that the Thomas and Friends TV show was based off of, Mattel, the current owners of the franchise, released for the first time in the public eye the pilot episode of Thomas and Friends, which was an early version of Down the Mine. So, the story behind this was when Britt, David, and the rest of the crew behind Thomas were making the TV series, they made a pilot of it before they officially got started on it, and the story they chose for it was Down the Mine. So this was produced and was shown in 1983 initially as sort of the testing grounds for the TV series before it got officially picked up. And for the longest period of time, like outside of them initially showing the pilots to be picked up for the show, like the piloted version of Down the Mine was unknown to the public eye for like a very, very long period of time. Like there was very little information about it for the 40 plus years that it's been known until Mattel officially released the pilot. Before I start talking about the details of the pilot, I might as well, of course, since I'm talking about the pilot for Down the Mine, I might as well give the synopsis of the Down the Mine storyline. So, this was after the events of Off the Rails, where Gordon fell into a ditch, and not too long afterwards, in the plot of Down the Mine, Thomas notices Gordon's funny ditch smell and kind of jokes about it a bit, which gets his coaches Annie and Clarabelle upset about it. So, later words, Thomas was working in a mine, and I don't know why, but he for some reason just did not want to follow the danger sign and just basically led to his own accidents, falling into a ditch. Or should I say a mine itself? Yeah, because the episode's called Down the Mine, of course. And eventually Gordon comes by to save him, which even though Gordon found it kind of funny at first, you know, he did save Thomas at the end of the day, and because him and Thomas both had their own silly accidents, they formed an alliance afterwards, and that was basically the synopsis of Down the Mine in a nutshell. This episode, of course, like outside of the pilot, this did end up being an actual episode that they would later broadcast as a part of the first season of the show. But of course, there are some noticeable differences between this pilot version and the final version. So one of the biggest differences is, of course, the models of Thomas and Gordon themselves. Now, Thomas, from what I've seen, doesn't have the most noticeable features besides less details on his model, and of course, one of the biggest noticeable differences between this version and the final version are the fact that him and Gordon don't have lamp irons for some reason. And speaking of Gordon, his model, I think, probably has like the biggest difference between this version and the final version that we're more familiar with. Like, obviously the way his face is sculpted is a bit different. Like, I noticed the pilot Gordon's faces have a bit less wrinkles than the Gordon faces that we're very familiar with nowadays in the series. Like, I noticed pilot Gordon's faces are smoother looking. Now, of course, that is kind of weird because he only has like two face expressions. I can only judge from just those two face expressions, but that's from what I can tell. But yeah, in terms of Thomas's face expressions, like, they're not that noticeably different from the final version. It's subtle. I will pull up pictures of kind of Thomas's faces compared to the faces he had in the final version of Down the Mine, which, speaking of Down the Mine, there are some footages from the pilot episode that did end up being in the final version, like, for example, Thomas moving away from Knapford Station and going towards the mines, like that was actually used in the final version of the episode, which you could kind of tell because it was actually the only time where you actually saw the pilot version of Thomas in the actual TV show. Other uses of the pilot footage being used in the final version were some of the close-ups of Sir Topham Hatt that were used, and also some of the shots of Thomas and Annie and Clarabelle going towards Knapford. Like, those are some of the only footage from the pilot that was used in the final version of the episode. Other than that, the rest of the footage that you saw of the pilots is exclusively to the pilots and wasn't seen until 2025. So, yeah, people for the longest period of time thought that this pilot was lost media, but nope, it was apparently in the Mattel archives, from what I've heard, and it was restored in honor of the 80th anniversary of the Railway series, which I think was a very fitting time for them to release this pilot episode to the public. And yeah, it was quite a big day for Thomas fans in May 2025 when the pilot episode was released. Like, one of the biggest pieces of lost media now finally seen to the public. Now, a couple of the interesting things to point out with the Mattel releasing the pilot episode is that there are some differences that they've added. Like, they've added an exclusive intro and outro to the pilots. Like, the intro, they actually had they used B-roll footage from the production of the pilots where you could actually see, like, the people's hands on the models during the production, which I thought was kind of neat. And apparently, from what I've heard, they couldn't use the music for the pilots because apparently the pilot music they used was not found. So they actually ended up getting Mike O'Donnell, one of the two original composers of the series, to compose some new music for this re-released version of the pilots, which I thought was really, really interesting. And this is like the first time that Mike O'Donnell was actually involved with Thomas since, after season 7. So that's really cool. Don't know why Junior Campbell wasn't involved with this, but actually let me before I really say that, is Junior Campbell still alive? Okay, thankfully he's still alive. All right. I just wanted to make sure. Okay. So yeah, I'm honestly not sure why Junior wasn't involved with it, but well, hey, one is better than none, I ought to say. And one more thing I gotta point out that I'm surprised I didn't point out earlier, but there were a few instances in the actual pilots that I'm surprised they did not use in the final version of the episode. So there's actually a shot, like before Thomas crashes into the mine, you could actually see footage of the mine itself collapsing before Thomas falls into it, which was interesting. I'm very surprised was not used in the final version. And in terms of the dialogue, so this was, of course, just like in the actual first season of the show, Ringo Starr did narrate it, and there's some dialogue that was in the pilot that was not used in the final episode, which I thought was kind of interesting. So when Thomas and Gordon form their alliance, Gordon asked Thomas, like, shall we form an alliance? And Thomas, who had difficulty pronouncing the word alliance, he was like, an ally, what was it? And then Gordon replies saying, an alliance, Thomas, and united we stand, together we fall. Not sure why they didn't use that in the final episode, but it's there. And other than that, I got nothing else to say. The pilot episode now being viewable is cool. I liked it. Obviously, it's very different from what we're used to with the final episode, but I like that it's there and people can finally enjoy it for years to come. Just like the show itself. So, not much else to say. This was really interesting. I'm glad I talked about it. My apologies for not showing any actual footage from the pilot episode for this video, but I'm just worried that, like, Mattel probably hired some sort of sniper outside my window just in case I did show footage of it, because you know how Mattel could be when it comes to showing actual footage from the show. But anyways, that's a story for another time. But hopefully you guys enjoyed me talking about the pilot episode of Thomas, now finally surfacing for people to watch. And if you haven't seen it for yourself, what are you doing? Go ahead and type it. Just look up Down the Mine Pilots on YouTube and you'll be able to find it. It actually has like almost 3 million views as of the recording of this video. So, yeah, definitely check it out. Hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, feel free to give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos to come. And place a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think about this. And also, in terms of subscribing, make sure you turn on the notification bell so you get notified each time I upload a new video. That's about it. This is Tyler from the Character Workshop, signing out. And stay tuned next time for Arcade from England, where we're going to go back into the TARDIS to talk about another story. Sorry, as I said, I'm recovering from a cold. Anyway, stay tuned next time, where we go back and discuss another adventure with Doctor and his companions.
Remark, Thomas. What a funny smell.